"How's the market today, Marcus?" Elena asked, settling into the cheap plastic chair that served as her office for the next several hours. Marcus looked up from his collection of devices, his tired eyes reflecting the exhaustion that seemed to plague every human on the station. "Same as always. They want our salvage for scrap prices, but charge premium rates for anything we need." He gestured toward a small device on his table. "This is a quantum processor I pulled from a derelict science vessel. Fully functional, worth at least 10,000 credits by any reasonable standard." "What are they offering?" 500. They claim it's obsolete human technology, and that they're doing me a favor by taking it off my hands." Elena shook her head in disgust. The quantum processor was actually more advanced than most of the equipment she had seen the aliens using, but pointing that out would be futile. In the galaxy's eyes, if humans made it, it was inferior by definition. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Krell, a high-ranking Zorathian who served as the Empire's representative for human affairs. The tall reptilian figure moved with the predatory grace of his species, his yellow eyes scanning the human section with obvious distaste. "Greetings, scavengers," Krell said, his voice carrying the typical Zorathian combination of authority and contempt. "I trust your latest collection of refuse is meeting our quality standards." Elena and Marcus exchanged glances. Krell only visited when there was bad news, and his presence always meant more hardship for human colonies. "What can we do for you, Ambassador?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Krell's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "The Empire has decided to increase protection fees for human trade routes. Security concerns, you understand. The galaxy is becoming more dangerous, and ensuring the safety of your primitive vessels requires additional resources." "Increase by how much?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. 100%, effective immediately." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Doubled protection fees would be catastrophic for the human colonies. They were already struggling to meet basic needs, and this increase would push them past the breaking point. "That's impossible," Elena said, standing up so quickly her chair fell backward. "Our colonies can't survive that kind of increase. People will starve." Krell's eyes narrowed, and suddenly the temperature in the human section seemed to drop several degrees. "Are you questioning the Empire's authority, human?" Every instinct told Elena to back down, to apologize and accept the inevitable. That was what humans had been doing for decades, surviving by bending, enduring by accepting whatever scraps the galaxy was willing to throw them. But as she looked at Marcus, at the other human traders desperately trying to make ends meet, at the proud species around them who saw humanity as nothing more than useful vermin, something inside her snapped. "Yes," she said quietly, "I am." The trading floor fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as every being in the area turned to stare at the human who had just challenged a Zorathian ambassador. Marcus grabbed Elena's arm, trying to pull her back, but she stood her ground. Krell's laugh was like broken glass. "You amuse me, little scavenger. What exactly do you think you can do about it? Your entire species exists at the sufferance of your betters. You have no military, no technology, no allies. You are nothing but a collection of desperate refugees clinging to the edge of civilized space." "We are human," Elena said, her voice carrying a strength that surprised even her. "We survive. We adapt. And we remember." "Remember what?" Krell stepped closer, looming over her with his 7-foot frame. "Remember your place. Remember your limitations." Elena looked up at the alien ambassador, then around at the crowd that had gathered to watch the spectacle. She saw contempt in every face, amusement at the pathetic human who thought she could stand up to her betters. But in that moment, she remembered something else, something that gave her the courage to speak words that would echo across the galaxy. "We remember what it means to have nothing left to lose." Before Krell could respond, Elena's comm unit chirped with an incoming message. She glanced at the display and felt her heart skip a beat. It was a priority transmission from Earth, marked with a code she had been waiting to see for 2 years. The message was simple: Prometheus chain activated. Come home. Elena looked back at Krell, and for the first time in their conversation, she smiled. Ambassador, I think you're about to learn something very important about human limitations. And what might that be? Krell asked, his tone mocking. That we don't have any. Zorathian vessel, came a crisp human voice. This is Admiral Sarah Cross of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately. Faxel stared at the view screen in shock. Terran Defense Fleet. The humans had never possessed anything that could be called a proper military, let alone a fleet of this magnitude. This is General Faxel of the Zorathian Empire. I demand an explanation for this unprovoked aggression. Admiral Cross's image appeared on the main screen, and Faxel found himself looking at a human unlike any he had encountered before. Gone was the desperate, pleading expression he had grown accustomed to seeing on human faces. This woman radiated confidence and authority, her uniform crisp, and her bearing that of someone who had never known defeat. Unprovoked, Cross smiled, and the expression was anything but friendly. General, your people have been systematically bleeding my species dry for decades. You've imposed tribute that has kept our colonies on the edge of starvation, while treating us like vermin. I'd say we've been remarkably patient. The humans have no military capability. Faxel protested, though even as he spoke the words, the evidence before him suggested otherwise. Your technology is primitive, your resources limited. Were, Cross corrected. Past tense, General. You see, while your people were busy congratulating yourselves on keeping humanity in its place, we were learning. Every insult, every inflated price, every dismissive comment taught us something valuable about how the galaxy really works. She gestured, and the view screen split to show multiple displays. Faxel's eyes widened as he saw human fleets emerging from hyperspace around key Zorathian systems, their formations precise, and their intentions clear. You thought we were scavengers, Cross continued, but what we were really doing was studying. Every piece of primitive salvage we collected, every obsolete component we traded, every worthless bit of technology we hauled away was actually part of the largest intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. The truth hit Faxel like a physical blow. The quantum processors, the advanced composites, the sophisticated sensors that humans had been trading away for scraps, they hadn't been salvaging random junk. They had been systematically collecting and analyzing the technology of every major species in the galaxy. Project Prometheus, Cross said, as if reading his thoughts. 20 years of preparation, General. 20 years of letting you think you were superior while we rebuilt ourselves in secret. Every time one of your merchants cheated a human trader, every time an ambassador like Krell made us grovel for basic supplies, you were actually funding the greatest military buildup in galactic history. Faxel's communications officer reported similar fleets appearing throughout Zorathian space. The humans had achieved complete strategic surprise, emerging simultaneously across hundreds of systems with forces that outgunned anything the Empire could field. What do you want? Faxel asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Reparations, Cross replied immediately. For every credit you stole, every supply shipment you overcharged for, every moment of dignity you robbed from my people, the Zorathian Empire will compensate the human colonies for decades of exploitation. And if we refuse, Cross's smile grew colder. Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop playing by anyone else's rules. To demonstrate her point, Cross nodded to someone off-screen. Moments later, the Zorathian sensor array detected energy weapon signatures unlike anything they had ever encountered. A single beam lanced out from one of the human vessels and struck an unmanned asteroid several kilometers away. The asteroid didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, converted into its component atoms in a flash of brilliant light. The message was clear and terrifying. The humans had not only matched galactic military technology, they had surpassed it by an order of magnitude. Similar demonstrations were taking place across the galaxy. At Nexus Prime, the same human traders who had been dismissed as desperate scavengers just weeks earlier returned in gleaming warships, their cargo holds full of advanced technology instead of salvaged scraps. Ambassador Krell found himself facing Captain Elena Vasquez across a negotiating table, but this time the power dynamic had shifted completely. "I believe you owe my people an apology," Elena said calmly, consulting a datapad that listed decades of exploitation and abuse, and about 40 billion credits in reparations. Krell's yellow eyes blazed with fury, but the human fleet surrounding Nexus Prime made any thoughts of resistance academic. "This is impossible. You're primitives, scavengers. How did you?" The crowd erupted in laughter at what they assumed was a desperate bluff from a cornered human. Even Krell chuckled, shaking his head at the pathetic display. But Elena was already walking away, her comm unit buzzing with similar messages from every human trader on the station. The recall was universal, immediate, and absolute. As she reached her ship, Elena paused at the docking bay entrance and looked back at Nexus Prime. The massive station continued its business, as if nothing had changed, but she knew better. In the past hour, every human merchant, trader, and salvage operator in the galaxy had received the same message. The scavengers were going home, and when they returned, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The defiant spirit powered up with a rumble that seemed different somehow, stronger than before. As Elena set course for Earth, she opened a secure channel to her home world and spoke the words that officially ended humanity's century of submission. "This is Captain Vasquez, reporting for duty. Tell the Admiral that the scavengers are coming home, and we're bringing everything we've learned." Behind her, Nexus Prime grew smaller in the view screen, its lights twinkling like stars that had no idea they were about to be outshined. The greatest underestimation in galactic history had just begun to unfold, and humanity was done being underestimated. The Prometheus Awakening. 3 weeks after the Great Recall, the galaxy began to notice something was wrong. Trade routes that had relied on human salvage operations for decades suddenly went quiet. Stations that had grown comfortable with steady streams of desperate human merchants found their docking bays eerily empty. The scavengers had simply vanished, leaving behind questions that no one seemed able to answer. In the command center of the Zorathian flagship Dominion's Edge, General Thaxel studied the reports with growing concern. The massive dreadnought hung in space near the outer edge of human territory, part of a fleet that had been sent to investigate the sudden disappearance of humanity's trading vessels. "How many systems have gone dark?" Thaxel asked his intelligence officer, a younger Zorathian whose scales still held the bright colors of inexperience. 17 confirmed, sir. All human colonies have ceased communications, and their shipping lanes are completely empty." Thaxel's claws drummed against the tactical display. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen an entire species simply disappear. The humans had been predictable in their desperation, reliable in their submission. This silence was unprecedented and deeply unsettling. "Have we detected any military buildup, fleet movements, distress signals?" "Nothing, sir. It's as if they simply left." Before Thaxel could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the Crystalline Commerce Guild. The holographic form of High Merchant Vextar materialized above the command deck, his crystalline features pulsing with agitated colors. "General Thaxel," Vextar began without preamble, "we need to discuss the human situation. Our profit margins have dropped 40% in the past month. The Empire is aware of the issue," Thaxel replied carefully. "We have a fleet investigating the matter." "Investigating." Vextar's form flared with indignant reds and oranges. "The humans owe us credits, General. Thousands of transactions left incomplete, contracts unfulfilled. If they think they can simply hide and avoid their obligations, The high merchant's words were cut off by an alert from the sensor array. The communications officer looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of Earth. Multiple contacts, approaching at high velocity." Faxel moved to the main view screen just as the first human ships came into visual range. What he saw made his blood run cold. These were not the patched-together scavenger vessels he remembered. The ships approaching his fleet were sleek, predatory, and gleaming with the unmistakable signs of advanced technology. They moved in perfect formation, their energy signatures reading higher than anything in the Zorathian arsenal. "How many?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 112 ships, sir." "No, wait. More contacts appearing. 200, 300. The sensor officer's voice cracked with disbelief. "Sir, I'm reading over 1,000 vessels, all showing military configurations." The lead ship broke formation and approached the Dominion's edge with casual confidence. It was massive, easily dwarfing the Zorathian dreadnought, its hull covered in weapon systems that Thaxel didn't recognize. As it came to a stop directly in front of the flagship, a communications request came through. The Scavenger's Shame. The massive trading station Nexus Prime floated in the void like a metallic flower, its countless docking bays stretching outward like petals reaching for distant stars. Ships from across the galaxy clustered around its ports, their hulls gleaming with the pride of established civilizations. Among them, tucked away in the cheapest outer ring, sat the human vessels. Battered, patched, and constantly humming with the sound of overworked engines, they looked like beggars at a feast of kings. Captain Elena Vasquez stepped off her cargo hauler, the defiant spirit, and immediately felt the familiar weight of 1,000 stairs. The alien merchants and traders moved through the massive corridors with purpose and confidence, their advanced environmental suits gleaming, their technology seamlessly integrated into their daily lives. They spoke in languages that flowed like music or rumbled like distant thunder, negotiating deals worth more than most human colonies could imagine. Delena pulled her worn jacket tighter and checked the manifest on her aging datapad. Another load of salvaged materials to trade for basic supplies. Another day of scraping by while the galaxy's elite looked down on humanity as nothing more than useful scavengers. She had been making this run for 5 years now, ever since the Zorathian Empire had imposed their protection fees on human trade routes, effectively forcing humanity to work twice as hard for half the profit. The central plaza buzzed with activity as Elena made her way toward the trading floors. Crystalline beings from the Commerce Guild moved like living gemstones, their bodies refracting light in patterns that somehow conveyed complex financial data. The Zorathians, tall and imposing with their scaled skin and piercing yellow eyes, commanded respect wherever they walked. Even the peaceful Etherians, floating gracefully in their biomechanical suits, possessed technology that made human achievements look like stone tools. Elena approached the registration desk where a bored-looking Nexari clerk barely glanced up from his terminal. The creature's 6 arms moved with practiced efficiency, sorting through requests and applications with mechanical precision. Purpose of visit? The clerk asked in universal standard, his voice carrying the typical tone of someone who dealt with humans regularly, barely concealed disdain mixed with professional indifference. Trade registration. Salvage materials for medical supplies and food synthesizers, Elena replied, sliding her documentation across the counter. The clerk's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement. More human scrap metal. The recycling bay is on level 47. Industrial waste disposal is extra. These are processed materials, Elena said firmly. Refined metals, rare earth elements, and advanced composites. Advanced. The clerk's 4 eyes focused on her for the first time. Humans don't do advanced. You barely managed interstellar flight a century ago. He processed her application with exaggerated slowness. Docking fee is 200 credits. Processing fee is 50. Inspection fee is 75. Alien technology permit is... Oh wait, you don't have any alien technology. How quaint. Elena paid the fees without comment, Though each credit hurt, the money came from supplies her colony desperately needed, but arguing would only make things worse. She had learned that lesson the hard way during her first trading run, when she had spent 3 days in a holding cell for disturbing the peace, after questioning the Zorathian traders' obviously inflated prices. As she walked away from the registration desk, she overheard a conversation between two crystalline merchants that made her blood run cold. "The humans grow more desperate each quarter," one was saying, his voice creating harmonic resonances in the crystal formations around his neck. "The Zorathians are bleeding them dry with those tribute demands." "Good business for us," replied the other. "Desperate sellers make for excellent profit margins. I hear their outer colonies are rationing basic medical supplies now. Perhaps we should lower our buying prices again." "What can they do?" "Build their own technology." Both creatures produced the grating sound that passed for laughter among their species. Elena's hands clenched into fists, but she forced herself to keep walking. Getting angry would accomplish nothing. Her people needed these supplies, and her pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. She made her way to the trading floor, where the real humiliation would begin. The human sector was exactly what its name implied. A small, poorly lit corner of the station, where humanity's representatives tried to conduct business, while the galaxy's elite pretended they didn't exist. Elena found her usual spot next to Dr. Marcus Chen, a former university professor who now spent his days trying to trade salvaged research equipment for basic medical supple.